Today's episode talks about a very important topic, inclusivity in the wellness space. I got to have a conversation with Nikkia Young about her experience in a marginalized body in the running and yoga community. We unpack what body positivity is and if it's helpful or if it's harmful, and how to reframe your relationship with fitness. Everybody's learning, everybody's growing, everybody's got to start somewhere. Hi everyone, and welcome to How the Wise One Grows. Let's take a moment to just drop in and ground together. So settle into a space that feels safe and supportive for you. And if it's safe for you, you can gently rest your eyes. And just notice where your body is touching the earth. Feel your spine lengthen as your head reaches towards the sky. And slowly soften your shoulders down the back. And take a big breath in. And a big breath out. 2 more. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale. And exhale. And return to that sensation of your body being held by the earth. And you can slowly open your eyes and just land here with us. I'm so excited because today I get to be in person with someone I haven't actually seen in person since pre-pandemic at least. It's been a long time. So I'm so excited, and this is the first time she's in my home.
Which is lovely.
So I'm here today with Nikkia Rae. Nikkia Rae lives in Richmond, Virginia, where she's a part of a supportive running community, which is where we first met. Right?
Probably, yeah.
She coaches new walkers and runners in 5K, 8K, 10K, and half marathon distances. She has recently served as president and treasurer of the Richmond Road Runners Club, where she's also a race director. Nikkia represents a myriad of amazing companies such as SaltStick, ProCompression, SPIBelt, and Fitness Protection Program. That one kills me. To date, she has completed 27 half marathons and 4 full marathons. That's insane. Her top accomplishments so far are PRing the Chicago Marathon in 2018. When she is not training for her next road race, she is a financial analyst, an active volunteer for her beloved sorority, Alpha Sigma Alpha, and a dog mom to the cutest Basset Beagle named Ranger. I love that name. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me. Yeah. I'm excited.
What her bio didn't mention is Nikkia also has a great podcast called Talking Points with Nikkia Rae.
Yeah, I basically, during the pandemic, had the time and the space to finally do something that I'd put out there for a long time. And so I got a coach, and I got,
that's cool.
get a podcast coach is the fun. It's one of those things where you don't realize what you don't know until somebody teaches you. And so I reached out, I'd gotten a scholarship through a friend. And so having this conversation with a woman named Nikita and Journey Girl Magic Productions, and she helped me kind of get those pieces together, get what my content was going to be together, and then how to edit. So I edit a lot of my podcasts, which is why they are short form.
I was so resistant to the editing, but I've actually ended up really enjoying it.
It's nice.
Yeah.
And it's funny because one of my many things in my background is that I am a vocal performance major, or I have a vocal performance degree, music degree, and I hated listening to myself. But then I think what's been nice is that it's a way for me to think about, okay, how did I share that idea? How am I going to share those ideas in the future? And I think it has helped me be better, even just at communicating.
I completely agree with that. completely.
It's weird. Like, you don't realize what you don't know until you start exploring it.
Yeah. Well, I feel like there's so many things we could talk about today. But today, I want our conversation to kind of focus on the two spaces we've gotten to know each other through, which are yoga and running, but kind of encompassing the wellness space as a whole. So I think that an important part of the conversation that isn't at the forefront of things as much as it should be, it is more these days, but is inclusivity in the wellness space. So do you mind first kind of sharing how you identify and how you got involved in the wellness space? Because you're very involved in it.
Yeah. So I actually started out as and I still am. So I am a plus size Black runner. And a woman too, because honestly, I feel like that those identities are sometimes not well represented in wellness spaces.
It certainly isn't.
And it's interesting because you would think like, well, of course, I see plenty of women. I see plenty of Black people. Like, and then you get to the plus size piece and you're like, oh, wait a minute. Mm-hmm. So when I graduated college, I moved to Richmond. I just was looking for something, and my job at the time was really cool about like funding people doing the 10K, doing the half marathon. So I was like, all right, well, I'll sign up for the 10K since somebody's going to pay for it. Did the 10K training team and loved it. Was not the fastest. I am not. I've never been the fastest. Like, I am strongly in the caboose. Mm-hmm. And honestly, most good races, business in the front, party in the back, kind of like a mullet. And so basically I trained, I showed up, the coaches were there, they were supportive. And I got to the end of my first 6-mile run, and a coach looks at me and goes, "You look like you can run 6 more." And I said, well, maybe I can.
All right.
And then I ended up signing up for the half marathon training team.
So was your first like intro to running signing up for the 10K? That was...
Well, it was my first intro to Richmond running. I had done a couple 5Ks and things back in Roanoke. I went to Roanoke College. And during that summer, I was kind of like trying to find what kind of physical fitness thing I wanted to get back into. Mm-hmm. I'd run and done a lot in high school. Like, I'd done volleyball, but I've always been a larger person. And I think that for me, it was like, oh, well, like, maybe I'll just like go out there, work out really hard, drop some weight, and then like, start my adult life anew. Mm-hmm. And that's not really how that works. So,
yeah.
And honestly, it's transition from that, like, oh, this is a weight loss journey, like I'm just trying to better myself, and now it's been more of a, I'm just doing this because I enjoy it. Mm-hmm. I love the feeling. I love like accomplishing different goals and things that I set out for myself. I've always been goal oriented, so it's been fun to like throw something out there and be like, I'm gonna do that.
Yeah.
and sometimes just try it, and then if you don't like it, you can always go back and readjust and change the goal. So
yeah. Well, that's something I really want to talk about more and I think it's a very common thing in my experience, especially with women, that we associate exercise with there being less of us.
Yeah.
It's like, I need to work out or go to the gym or go on a run because my body needs to be smaller. There actually physically needs to be less of me. And I think that's really detrimental to the conversation we're having with ourselves. We're taught we need to be less than all the time.
Right.
And I remember for me, at one point, my health shifted. I had shingles. I was on steroids for a long time. I gained like 50, 60 pounds. And I just was fixated on this needing less than. And then I got really mad. And I was like, you know what? This doesn't work. That's not how I want to feel about myself. And I shifted it to thinking about being excited for what my body could do and being stronger in my body and thinking about bringing more of me.
Yeah.
And that was a shift, but I don't think that is a part of the conversation a lot. So I'm curious about how you found that shift within yourself.
I think for me, the biggest thing was realizing that there was nothing wrong with me.
Yes.
I don't know if you know her. She goes by T-Rex. You've seen her. But she has a background in Eastern medicine and Western medicine. And we sat down at not Elrod's, Elwood's one day. And I was like, what? I was like, I just can't, like, nothing's working. And I'm like, I'm just really frustrated about the fact that, like, I'm doing more, I'm running longer, I'm lifting more weights, I'm doing all the things. Why isn't my body shifting? And she was like, is there anything wrong with it? Like, do you hurt? Like, are you like, and when she said wrong, it wasn't like framing it as the weight was wrong. You know, it was more so framing like, are you in pain? Yeah. Is there something that's not moving the way it shouldn't? And I was like, no. And I walked away from that conversation. And I will say that probably was one of the first times that someone said something like that to me. And I was like, oh my gosh, there's nothing wrong. My labs have been great for years.
That's so beautiful to hear. And I think that's so important to name because it's deeply embedded in our society and culture that, like, being fat, being bigger is wrong. It's like
it's a problem to be solved.
Yeah, it's lazy. It shows whatever they put in your head about these things. Yeah. And it's not, in fact, true. And then it actually diminishes the voices of people in different bodies when something is wrong. They point it to, well, like, have you
tried dropping weight?
Yeah.
Like, it's like, well, like most plus size people, and I hate to be like, oh, everybody feels this way, but I feel like most plus size people, when they've gone to the doctor, whether it was for like a head cold or a migraine or even something that's not even remotely related to the size of your body, have been told like, oh, well, just drop some weight and that'll fix everything. And it's like, that's not
how that works.
The problem.
Yeah. Yeah, and also when it comes to things like, if your labs are healthy, you are healthy. This is the way that your body is thriving in the world right now. There is nothing wrong with that. And I think we have it so embedded in our heads, but it's just this cultural thing.
It is. And it's hard to fight. I think one of the things too, I think we're seeing more of it in some wellness spaces, but we're also still seeing some of those harmful messages. And I mean, I have to catch myself sometimes when I'm doom scrolling. It's like, ooh, I just received that message. I don't need to take that in. I don't need to internalize that because that's not really how I view myself. And so I think we're seeing more of it in the space, but we need to see more of it. I think it's just it's going to take a cultural shift, and not just in wellness, but in like America. Yeah. Like it's, and I'm sure it's not even just an America problem, but we live here. So yeah. We can see it.
I think that's so important to name. And I applaud your awareness of that. I think that's huge to kind of know. Most people don't, right? Like I don't often when I'm scrolling and these messages are going in our head, in our subconscious, that are impacting how we feel and think and see. So when you have that awareness to be like, wait, that's not true. That doesn't resonate with me. That's so empowering. Yeah. But I think you point out something really important, which are these messages in the wellness space and experiences that the wellness space create for people. And do you have any like examples of messages in particular in the wellness space or issues in the wellness space you feel passionate about?
Yeah, I think, one of the biggest things on top of like, plus size people, all you need to do is just try a little harder and do a little more. And it's like, whoa. Sometimes you literally need to do less.
Yes. I think we all kind of need to do less right now.
Like sometimes it's not even doing more. And that lesson kind of came from my run coach, who she was like, I'm looking at I wear a run watch and she can see it. It's uploaded to like the cloud and she can take and parse all the numbers. And she's like, you're doing too much. She's like, I can literally see it.
You're running 27 half marathons.
And I mean, at like peak Nikkia was doing some wild stuff. I'm not gonna lie. Like it was like 3 8-mile runs a week on top of the long run on the weekend. And then I was slinging weight. And then I was also taking spin class. And then when I wasn't doing that, I was throwing an extra, yoga class at the end of the day. And it's like, she's like, you're doing too much. She's like, your body is literally holding on for dear life, and that's probably what's happening.
Well, your body goes into survival mode. Like rest is it's key. It's a necessary part of all of our body's functions, and it allows you to strengthen. It allows your body to replenish, and it allows your body to let go too when it's told like, hey, you're enough. It's enough. You can rest right now. Then your nervous system can reset and your body's functions can work as they're meant to.
Right. And I think that that's one of the things I think so many of us, especially if you find yourself in a larger body, or if you're like, I can't get rid of these last like 5-10 pounds, and maybe if I just do more, if I do more, sometimes it's literally doing less that will help. And you'll find that balance. Because I think that's where I had to like figure it out, was like, what was the balance for me and my body? And also it changes from season to season. Like there's some heavy run race seasons that I'm like, yeah, this feels great. I feel like I'm in a building period. And right now I'm in kind of like a breakdown period. Like, what doesn't serve me as much? What can I take away? Is it just, do I prefer to lift weights that are heavy? Is it I'm doing more yoga instead of cardio? Is it, just figuring out what that balance looks like for this body at this time, and not comparing yourself to who you were when you were 25.
Yeah, seriously. I think listening to your body in the present moment, like every day, every time you show up to whatever activity, whether it's a run or on the mat or at the gym or laying in bed, just being like, what do you need right now? Because your body is going to give you the best answer.
Every time.
Yeah.
Every time.
Yeah. Have you experienced what has your experience been like in the running space when you started running? Did you feel like it was a very inclusive space from the start? Did you feel any tension in that area?
Oh, there's very much tension. And I think there still is. Like, it's kind of funny, like even being, the president or past president of the Richmond Road Runners Club, and not saying like there's anything wrong with Richmond, because I think that we are a microcosm of the broader American run system, right? So there's nothing wrong with the Richmond Road Runners Club. If anything, I have been very welcome there. I'm loved there.
You are.
People know know who I am, and I hope that we can continue to extend that to more people in different spaces and places in their journey. But I think some of it is that people don't realize their own bias until they're confronted with it. Until you have me in your run club and you're like, oh, she's taking too long. We need to take down the things. We need to do this. We need to do that. And it's like, well, what kind of experience are we providing to people? If, you're finishing a race and you win the race and you're coming back and rerunning the route, what do you think that says to people who are at their first race? Yeah. Oh, I'm so slow that the winners are doing a victory lap. And I know people don't mean it maliciously.
But that's an important awareness to hold.
But it's a view. And I've run with people on one of their first races, and they saw the winners come back and they were like, are we that slow? And it's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. This is your race.
Yeah, we are running this.
We are doing this. We're moving. We're still moving forward. Right?
Yeah.
Like, it's one of the most important things I think in running that we forget sometimes, is that we're so focused on the numbers and the data and the, I need to make sure I hit this sprint at this time and this at this time. And it's like, sometimes you just need to like, let it go. Get through your route, whether it's a hard run or a not so hard run, and go from there. But I think that there's some like awareness things that the running community as a whole could work on. And even just time limits. Like, what are we saying to people when we're cutting folks off halfway through an event that they might have trained for months? Yeah. What are we saying? And I will say, as a race director, I do know that you are at the mercy of your city, county government. So I will absolutely acknowledge that, because I feel like as race directors, we do not explain that well enough, is that you are at the mercy of what the city gave you as far as your permit. So if like you can allot for more time, but that is going to cost your race a little bit more money. So I think being realistic in those spaces and places, but like also making sure like, hey, we don't expect you to do this in this amount of time. Let's open it up. Let's make sure our pace is accommodating for walkers or different kinds of bodies. Because, we also have a very large adaptive athlete population here, which is really kind of cool. And so making sure that we're not leaving anybody behind, even in the first round of rules, right?
Yeah, that's something I had never really thought about before, is how much a time barrier that puts on people. Because if you feel you can't finish a race in X amount of time because of what's happening in your body, that's a huge barrier preventing people from even stepping out and trying.
Yeah. And we've seen it more and more. And I think we're working on it, like, especially here in Richmond, we're working on expanding the time frames, right? But with that whole, like, you're kind of at the mercy of the area that you're in and, you know, what either the police or the county allows. Ashland Half is a great example of that. Like, in the past, we were able, they used to have to cut it off at 3 hours. And that was because Hanover was like, hey, this is how long you can have the roads open. Sorry about it. And then, after years of negotiating, they were finally able to convince them, hey, let's start it 30 minutes earlier. If we start 30 minutes earlier, is that going to be a problem? So now it's expanded to 3:30, which is still a little on the swift side.
Is that for a half? Or?
For a half.
Yeah, I mean, it can take...
That opens up, especially if you're doing a half in the summer.
Yeah. I mean, that's not the most amount of time, you know? It could certainly be more.
Oh, there's been longer, folks, and I'm a strong believer of, like, leaving no one behind.
Yes.
So when I coach the half team, like, I've been out there. I believe in being out there. So it might take people upwards of 5.5 hours, especially if they're struggling with heat or, you know, maybe there's an injury that you sustained along the way, but you still want to finish.
Yeah.
And I think we just have to be realistic in some of those spaces of, like, hey, you can still accomplish this. How can we help you keep moving forward rather than like, oh, the time is up. Let's throw you in the van and get you to the finish line.
Yeah. Yeah. That's such a unfortunate feeling to put on someone when they have taken this huge step towards accomplishing something huge that most people never will even try.
Just showing up.
Yeah.
Sometimes is really the victory. And I think that we have to continue to learn how to acknowledge that. Because I think for so many folks, even, you know, whether they're seasoned runners or new runners, they put a number in their head. They're like, I'm going to get it in this time frame, not thinking that you don't know what the weather's going to be like. You don't know if, like, you're going to break a shoestring. I mean, the craziest things have happened. I've literally broken a bra in the middle of a marathon. So
that's amazing.
Would not recommend running the New York City Marathon in a
broken bra,
a zip tied.
Oh my gosh!
I had to they zip tied me back into it.
Wow! Wow! Memorable.
Yeah. I should literally hang it up in my house and be like, I did that.
You should. That's its own trophy.
So yeah, I mean, you don't know what you're going to encounter on race day, but like, I think that's part of it too, right? Is like, okay, I can do this. I can conquer whatever comes my way. And that's what training's about. Yeah. It's like, you keep training over a period of time to hopefully encounter all the things you're going to encounter on race day and then go for it when you get there.
Yeah. because we were talking earlier about like the shift that you experienced from like wanting there to be less of you to being like, hey, I am enough. Has your training kind of mirrored that at all?
Yeah. And I also will say like the training helped.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, oh, my body did that. Like my body ran that 10 miles in 90-degree heat. Like we did it. Like, you know, it's one of those, I think for me, it was creating an appreciation for my body.
Yes.
Like, and rather than like, oh, I'm so mad we didn't hit that pace or this, it's like, we got through that. We conquered every mile, and you know, you have to kind of approach every mile as its own mile, because that's how it comes, right? It's like the first mile is a liar. Sometimes the second one is too. And sometimes the third one. And you just kind of keep going until you get to the end and you're like, I don't regret that. Yeah. You know, like I don't regret being able to move my body in that way. For me, it's also been like lifting weights. And it's just seeing like, oh, okay, I can lift that. Okay, let's see what else my body can do. And kind of looking at yourself with wonder. Yes. Rather than disdain.
I love that. Looking at yourself with wonder. Yeah. This piece reminds me of your episode on body positivity and how that there's more unpacking to that term to do than I think most people take. We take it as like, oh, that sounds like a great thing off the bat, but it can be pretty detrimental. But I think what I'm hearing you say is like, it's not that it's this like body positivity. I have to be in this almost like toxic positivity mindset about my body. It's like a conversation with your body and experiencing compassion towards yourself and your body and getting to know it where it's at and kind of acknowledging the strength of it in each moment.
Right. Because even like body neutrality, like I think that even being neutral about your body, like, it is a shell. It is a shell that I occupy.
Neutrality is such an important thing.
That's a great place to even get to, right? Because we know so many people that are in a space that are just like, ugh, I hate my body, I don't like it. So even if you could just get to like a neutral space of like, okay, this is the body I exist in.
I think it's healthier all around to be in a body neutrality thing, because a body is a body.
It's a body.
Yeah, like
it's the shell that we
put all these attachments to it that aren't real so much.
Exactly. And so I think for a lot of times people see and hear body positivity and think like, oh, those people love their bodies every day. It's like, there's
exhausting.
It's like, no, there's some days where it's like, ooh, I need to show my body love in a different way, whether that's recovery or like nutrition or, we are going to just, enjoy the couch for one day and then pick it back up another day. Or maybe in positivity, I think people just assume it's like you love yourself with reckless abandon. And it's like, it's being positive about what your body can do.
Yes.
So I would honestly invite folks to just, if body neutrality is where you're at that day, because of course it ebbs and it flows. Neutrality, it's cool.
I think it's a great place to thought. I don't know if you're familiar with Amber Carnes. Oh. Amber Carnes used to be on the board at PYR, and their work has evolved in more recent years, but they, I might butcher exactly what their work was originally called, but it was based in body positivity, and I think it was under that umbrella overall term. Amber Carnes is amazing. She's a bigger woman, and she really focused on empowering people in bigger bodies, how to feel comfortable in the yoga space.
Right.
And to empower your body and meet it where it's at. And then like education for teachers on how to support people with different bodies. So I was fortunate enough to take work from her. But one of the lessons she taught in a workshop I was at was like, there is the thought that you have right now. It's your base thought. And then there's your goal thought. And to go from that base thought of like, maybe it's like, I hate my body right now. And if you want your goal, or like, my body is worthless, it can't do anything. Maybe that's my base thought. And maybe my goal thought is like, I have the best, most beautiful body in the world. You can't make that jump. Like, if I just replace that one with the other, it's not necessarily gonna get me there. So there was a worksheet with like different stepping stones. So like, okay, my base thought is like, my body is the worst in the world or whatever. Then the next step is more of that body neutrality. It's like, I have a body. My body needs food. My body needs rest. My body can do things. Like all these different things that you can get your mind to believe, well, I can believe this is true. Once I can believe this is true, I can believe that is true.
To the next one.
Yeah, and then eventually get you to where you need to be in a healthy way. And maybe along that way, you change that goal thought to something that's more fitting and authentic to you and where you're at. But I come back to that on so many levels of life, because I think just replacing a negative thought with something that we think is really positive, we think that's like a helpful, healing thing, but if it doesn't match, it doesn't align.
It's harmful sometimes.
Yeah, it is. It's harmful.
Because you're almost, sometimes you could be ignoring it, right? So let's say you are like, ooh, I don't feel good about my body today. Okay, well, is the body in pain? Are we, is there something that's not feeling right? I love
that you come back to the physical, like that person told you at Elwood's, like, is there something physically wrong?
Not clicking? Because sometimes I think that we like to ignore it, right? We prior to the pandemic, and I think we're getting better about it. Thank you to the pandemic about it. But it's like, we would ignore that we're sick, or we would ignore that we're not feeling well, or we push through and we keep going. And then, your body, if you don't take a break, your body will take a break for you. And it won't always be,
it will tell you
a good time for that. And so I think, and I am happy to see the shift in transition away from the pandemic, hopefully, that people are realizing that, like, oh, I have the sniffles, I will stay home. And like, that will be the normal.
Yes, listening to your body, not like, I have a cold. It seems like a good work ethic if I still show up.
Keep fighting.
Yeah.
Like, sometimes you
no,
gotta
you're
listen.
hurting everyone.
Yeah, like you gotta listen.
Yeah.
And it's wild because it's like, 3-4 years ago, you know, you would have been like, oh, well, no, that slacker didn't come in because they were sniffling. And it's like, now I'm like, thank goodness, I am so glad that you thought not only of yourself, but the broader community of saying, hey, I'm not feeling well. I'm going to remove myself from this situation so that I can take care of me and hopefully take care of someone else by not continuing to spread this.
Yeah.
So I think thinking in that way of like, oh, because I think we've ignored a lot of our physical cues, right?
Yes.
I think we've been told like, oh, like it's fine, fight through the pain. You know, we love doing that kind of stuff. And some of that I think is just cultural. And especially as women, it's like, oh, that's not that bad. It's just a headache. And it's like, well, what is that headache trying to tell you?
Yeah.
Are you dehydrated? Is there something else going on? And I hope that we can tap more into that, whether it's in the wellness space or just in general. Because I think that we're missing a lot of cues.
I definitely think so. I think that listening to body is key. And that's such a good way to have that conversation with yourself. I am curious because I know you through running, but I also know you through yoga, which is such a gift. So I'm really curious about how yoga came into your journey and I know there are a lot of problems with inclusivity in yoga. So I'd be curious about what your experience with that has been like.
So it's actually been, yoga came to me more so in college. Like of course you hear about it. It's part of the lexicon. It's part of, general wellness. And I'd taken it as a college student because I needed a physical activity to, check off the boxes to graduate and all that fun stuff. So I was like, yoga doesn't sound too bad. I can still wear, yoga pants to class and I can go to work after. Like, I won't feel like I have to go all the way back to my dorm and shower and come back, which is actually a full blown lie. Because if if you've done any form of yoga, and sometimes, standing in mountain pose will get you sometimes if you're really fighting
if you're engaging. Yeah.
So I started doing it because I also thought that the breath work would be good because I have a musical performance degree. And so I was like, all right, we'll do yoga. Yoga sounds like a good idea. Some of my sorority sisters were taking it and I was like, rock on. And it was a win-win. And honestly, I really did enjoy it. Of course, you go through college, that was fun. But I'll do other things now.
Yeah.
And so when I moved to Richmond, I think in tandem with getting into running, I was like, oh, I'm gonna need to stretch out or something. And I still don't know or don't remember how I really connected with PYR.
Yeah.
But I loved it. It was it was like the cross.
That was a great entry. Oh. Well, my perspective, a good place to enter into the practice.
I think it was perfect for me because not only was it there were different people, different shapes, different sizes, and also just different levels. I remember one gentleman that would come in and how yoga teachers say, you can come in and do Shavasana and it's your practice. And there was literally one guy that would always do that. And I'm like, it really is your practice.
Well, then it gives others permission to do the same. I think that's important when you're attending a class. If you're pushing and your body's telling you no, if you stopped pushing, other people might stop pushing too. Yeah. And that might be a conversation to the instructors too. Too much. That's not where we are today. Let's adjust class. I tend to look at I give people the option of down dog or child's pose. And based off of how many people do down dog versus child's pose, I decide how I pace the class from there. If everyone's in down dog, I think you're ready. If you're in child's pose, I think, all right, we're going to flow this way then. I'm into it. Yeah.
And I think we're really lucky in Richmond with the just nature of yoga teachers that we have, because you can go to the Y and you're getting just good instructions, people that care, people that are asking consent before touching you, which is always a win.
Necessary.
Always a win.
Necessary.
And so those I think that for me that was a really cool space of just growing and learning. There used to be a 5:30, and it's been years now. There was a 5:30 class. It was perfect because I could go do the class and then go home, shower, and then make it to work on time. And I was like, this is great. And, of course, that shifts and changes, but being able to have that supplement my training, but then also in its own way, when I started to really lean into yoga in those recovery spaces, it's wait a minute. oh, I move better because like I can feel where in my body I need to stretch. I can feel, I recognize, I can isolate, oh, that muscle needs a little bit more love. Oh, when I'm in down dog, like I can feel like that hamstring's not happy today.
Yeah.
Okay, that helps me also know. And then it allows you to come to where you are. Because I think that's the biggest thing is that sometimes, and this is something that we always have to tell runners, is that like yoga class is not a competition.
Yes.
And I know so many runners that have gotten hurt in a yoga class.
Yeah.
And it feels silly, right? Because it's like, how did you get hurt in yoga?
But very common. I think it's actually very possible to get hurt in yoga if you're not.
Yes.
And I think the beauty of yoga paired with running is what you're saying of this, like learning to listen to your body. So that, because I think we got to really know each other when I was teaching yoga for runners. And I think one of my key takeaways personally with yoga for runners is like we're learning how to listen to our body. So when I'm on a run, instead of being like, ouch, that hurts, let's keep going, must finish. It's like, ouch, okay. Is that a pain because my muscles are tired right now? Or is that like an actual pain I need to stop? Yeah. And I think that comes into play on the mat too. I think often our minds become so loud that we're like, oh yeah, more chaturanga's got to keep going even though my shoulder's ready to crash. But if we learn how to truly listen and actually tap into the practice of yoga, then we're honoring our body and we're not pushing, we're not striving, we're not onto that attachment. We're present with what's happening, what's going on right now.
And I think that that's another thing, because I think even, you know, in yoga, especially in like the early years for me, it's like I kept thinking on the next thing. I was like, okay, and it wasn't necessarily like the next pose. It was like, okay, so after this class, I'm gonna do this, and then I'm gonna go do this, and I need to take the dog out, and I need to cook dinner, and it's like, whoa. Let's like enjoy this moment and what's being built out and what's going. And I think the space at PYR was really good about that, especially like with it being a little bit on the darker side.
Yeah.
It was a little quirky. And so as I've shifted more so to a home practice, it's been kind of nice because I don't feel that outside pressure of like other people like, oh, like she's gonna go into child's pose. What's wrong with her? And it's like, oh, I can just do this. And so as I'm slowly reconnecting back into the broader, you know, or going into bigger practices with other people, I'm like, okay, I need to remember that all that like mindfulness that I had at home, I need to bring it with me.
Yes.
Because that's the hard part, I think.
I think so. And I think that's why like a self-practice, whether it's meditation or yoga or any sort of mindfulness-based practice, it's really important to have that space on your own and those times where it's like a true practice of you can kind of control the setting a little bit to some degree. So that then and your mind can get stronger in that space, kind of like working out at the gym. Right. So that then when you step out inside the world, you can practice that, you can strengthen that muscle, you can use it because you've built up that muscle. Like now I can pick this up because I've been strengthening. Yeah, now I can practice being mindful in this situation when I want to scream. And instead of screaming, I'm going to like take a breath, try to react differently.
Yeah, definitely when I started practicing during the pandemic at home, there was a lot of moments where I'd be like, nope, my body's not doing that today.
That's great.
And it was so funny because I was like, I'm gonna have to like rein that in. Like when I go back to a class in person, I was like, I'm gonna have to rein that in because somebody's gonna call someone out and be like, absolutely not. This is not today. But it's been nice. It's been really nice to like have that, and then also like using blocks and things. And I know that sounds silly. I know it sounds silly because they've always been there, right? We always tell people,
but they might be told to grab them. And I know as a teacher, I'm guilty of this. It's not often expressed how to use them in each pose. So if I give you the invitation to grab a block, but then I'm not showing how to use it in a pose, you're like, what do I do with this thing that's here? You want me to like build something? Like,
yeah. And it's so funny because I have always had blocks. And I've never used them either correctly or they just weren't the right thing for what I needed. So I bought like some new blocks because I was like, okay, we're going to just, treat ourselves to some new gear. I like to refresh some of the fitness stuff in my home after a while. And I found these blocks and they were so sturdy. And I was like, this is what I was missing. This is what this is supposed to feel like. Oh my goodness. It makes a world of difference. And just being finding those modifications and things. I've actually really been enjoying working or watching more yoga teachers in a prenatal space, because they're having to make space,
yes,
for bellies and things, and it's like, yeah, girl, like, same. Like, I am not in a prenatal state of my life, but
but it's making room for your body and showing you ways.
And I'm like, oh my goodness, like, this modification could have been like, where has this been? And then, of course, like, you can't give every modification, which I demo strength classes, and sometimes I'm like, I only have like a minute in the move before I'm like, oh, I didn't give them this I didn't give them this modification. But like, I think that modification is so important. Like, and just learning and being okay with it, right? Because that's still honoring that your body and still getting the proper form out of the pose or the move.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you've done a lot of things to support yourself to feel more included in the yoga space and the wellness space, from like learning what other modifications might work for you, like looking at prenatal yoga, because you're like, yeah, my body feels more in tune with that right now, and like finding the right props, like, okay, this one wasn't working, this one's more sturdy. What things have instructors maybe done or not done to make you feel included in a class and like supported in it, or not? Are there any things that are important that you think instructors should hear?
I think for most instructors, just making sure that you're aware of what different bodies might look like, where step 1 of a pose is versus step 3, because sometimes by the time you hit step 2.5, I'm out. And it's okay, because I also know in a community space, like, there may be some people that are at 3+. And I love the journey to a pose, so I love it when people are doing like the steps that can help you better get into that last pose. I think that process is really helpful, rather than just like, all right, half moon. It's like, whoa. There should be like 5 steps here.
Yeah.
And like, how do we get there? And I think when we say all levels, we mean all levels, because that is a hard spot sometimes, right?
Yeah.
It's like, how do you make sure that someone who might have a certification in yoga versus someone who's rolling in their first class feels welcome? And I think, and it's practice, right? We have to practice at those things, because if we don't practice, it doesn't become second nature.
Yeah.
So I think that the fluidity of it and being able to adjust and change on the fly is great, because you don't know who's rolling into your class every time. Same thing when we do strength class, same thing when I have like folks show up to me for running. I'm like, I don't know what these folks have been through. I don't know what their experience is, but I do want to make sure that, they feel welcome.
I think it's really important what you named too about like, when you say all levels, make sure you mean all levels. I think it becomes almost in some level you're like, well, I want to say all levels for my classes because I want to include everyone. To me, that's being inclusive. But is it actually inclusive if you're telling someone it's all levels and it's not? Like, maybe it's more inclusive if you say this one's beginner friendly, this one's intermediate, like this one's X, Y, and Z. And then you're really able to support people where they're at. So when they come and show up, they feel held, they feel supported, they feel like they can meet themselves where they're at.
Right. Because also, just because someone's in a intermediate space, right? I've been practicing for over 10 years. That doesn't necessarily mean that I'm not going to not use blocks.
Yes.
Right? So it's like, it
might be a more advanced practice to use blocks. And the person you're talking about in class who did Shavasana the whole time, probably the most advanced practice there was.
I was like, and it was so nice, because it was just like, all right, like, and once again, you don't know what those people are going through that day. Like, maybe that was like, I'm going to make it to the studio. I'm going to make it in a community. I'm going to go breathe. And that's what that person needed that day, right? Yeah. Like, and I was like, I just applauded him, because I was like, I never thought about that, because people always say it, but you never do it.
Yeah.
They always say, oh, if you need Shavasana, just go for it. And it's like, oh, he was going for it.
Yeah. I love it. So is there anything that you would suggest for people who want to reframe their relationship with wellness, to feel more? I think it's, to my perception, you seem to have a very like positive a very like open relationship with what, like running, yoga. You have a passion for fitness, it seems, and it's like something you enjoy and are finding joy, and it's helping you find joy within yourself. what is something you would suggest people who want to have a more open relationship with fitness?
In general, I want people to like try stuff, but not feel like you have to stick with something. Because I think so often people are told like, this is the best way to get fit, or, you know, like, and it's, that might not be for you.
Yeah.
Like I do enjoy Zumba, but I have 2 left feet, you know, and then it's like, I would get home from somewhere like, oh my God, my body hurts. Like I hurt. And not to say that there's anything wrong with Zumba. It could be that I was doing it wrong, but I
can't do Zumba either.
Yeah. But just like exploring those things and being willing to say like that, I tried that. I didn't enjoy it, or I tried that. I'm willing to try it again and see how it goes. But also, if you find yourself in a space that isn't or does not feel welcoming, it's okay to leave that space.
Yes.
You do not have to fight the space. There is a space for you somewhere. Whether that's you create the space in your home. I do like this transition to home fitness. I never thought I would. I thought I would be a gym rat forever. But like with the increase of like, you know, Peloton at home and like these different like opportunities to like roll out of bed and work out, or like getting your own dumbbells and getting a mirror in your house, those kind of things made a huge difference for me, because I was like, oh, I'm more willing to do this, and I'm more willing to try things because there's no one watching. And that's okay too, right?
Yes.
You don't have to be physically in a space in front of other people to make your relationship with wellness real.
Yes.
Because I think we got to a place right before the pandemic where it felt like, or at least for me, is that some of that fitness felt performative, right? Like I have to be here because why not? And like, if people don't see me here, then they won't take me seriously. And it's like, wait a minute. This is about me and my body and how I see fitness and wellness. And maybe being in a certain space or having to sign up for a million different things isn't what really shows you as an athlete. What shows you as an athlete is what you feel like is being an athlete, right? We have to let go of other people's definitions, explanations, and tap into our own.
Yeah.
So that's the biggest thing I think with finding wellness, is like tapping into what your idea of being an athlete looks like, because we're all athletes in our own way.
Yeah. I think that's a really, really beautiful message to leave people with, is tapping into, in each moment, like what is true for you and your body, and not being afraid to try, and not being afraid to quit.
To leave.
Especially if you're entering in a space that isn't welcoming and supportive. Yeah. You don't have to be a part of that. It's be somewhere that makes you feel good, and keep exploring until you find a space that does. And if you want to be a part of a space that isn't, you feel comfortable, share that it's not making you feel supported.
It is okay to share, because I think a lot of people, like I said before, don't know what they don't know. And so they might be thinking like, oh, we've put out all the diversity and the inclusion statements. We have done the things. We've done the work. And then like they find out like, oh, we are missing the mark. There are spaces and places where people might be missing the mark and are still willing to work and build and change. Yeah. There's a lot of those spaces, but I think people still don't know, and especially if you aren't living in a marginalized body, so many people don't realize how other people see what could be going on. So yes, definitely step up and say something if you feel comfortable. Yeah. It could be an email. You don't have to, though. Yeah. But you don't have to. You don't owe them that either, right? And I think that that's another important thing, is like, so many times we feel like, well, I like the people, but like I don't want to cause any problems. And it's like, sometimes it's and do that value proposition for yourself, right? Yeah. Like, is it worth fighting and feeling like you're always going to be fighting in this space? Or is it, I want to make it better for the next person coming along? Or just exploring those feelings is really a good space. Yeah, certainly. I think that's really sage advice. And I also think it's important to have conversations like the one we're having right now, because people in different roles in the wellness space and situations, like, we're used to experiencing the world in our bodies. So I can try to educate myself about other things, but my default mode is based off of my body's experience. Right. So the more I put myself
in uncomfortable situations to have conversations about what I don't know, the more I'm able to integrate that when I'm in other situations. So the more we are willing to share and, feel uncomfortable, make mistakes, the more we can bring in those other perspectives too, and not be so focused on what's been reared in our bodies and minds time and time again.
Yeah. And it's nice. It's good to explore. And I think that once we get away from that, fear of oh, I'm worried we're going to do the wrong thing, we're going to make a misstep. Sometimes it's better to make a step in the right direction than to not make the step at all.
Yeah, certainly. Well, how can people continue to learn more about you, support you, and the wonderful things you're doing?
Yeah, so I run coach under Fitness Protection Program, which is really cool. I am a certified run coach. I don't know if I said that. So if you're interested in being virtually coached by me and my group, you can find us Fitness Protection Program. We're on Instagram. We have a website. You can find me on Instagram at Nikkia Young. And also you can find my podcast at, Talking Points with Nikkia Rae.
It's a really fun one, too.
It is fun. It's all over the place. It is, topics are different every week. And it's been fun to do. So I have an Instagram for that podcast, and I also am on Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, all the podcasting spots. So
awesome. Well, we'll definitely stay tuned, and I really appreciate you sharing your experience in these spaces and helping open up perspectives for other people to help hopefully make wellness spaces more inclusive and overall just the way we experience our bodies and fitness and wellness, just being more open, I think is the right word for that.
Open and in tune.
Open and in tune. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for taking time to listen to the wise one inside of you today. Please rate, review, and subscribe to this podcast to help it grow. Until the next time, let's keep taking it one breath at a time.